Hello everyone, welcome back to this course on Catia. I am Manthan Devani, your course instructor for this course. Let's begin for the day. So in the previous sessions, we had learned about the operations tab that the Catia provides in our 2D Sketcher workbench. Today we will look on the constraints tab. So what does constraint mean? In the Catia, constraint means to give the dimensions and to relate to relate the 2D sketch to another to relate to another 2D sketch. That means to fix dimensions and the angles of a 2D sketch. So let's see how that looks like. So let's say I have a hexagon with me. Mm, So I have a hexagon over here, and I want to define dimensions of this. So I will use the constraints tab for this. The first option is the constraint dialog box. So I will select this whole sketch and I will click on the constraint dialog box. So here you can see that we have different options like distance, length, angle, radius, horizontal, vertical. So what this means? So distance means we can give a distance of a single line or an edge with respect to another line or an axis. So like I want to give the distance of this edge from this y-axis. I will select this edge. I will select this. So it's not giving now. So let's say I want to have this edge vertical. So I will select this edge, I will select the vertical option, and I will this edge will be turned to vertical. If I turn this off and I change this to horizontal, this will be turned to horizontal. If I want to have a length of this edge, I will select the length option and I will the length of this will be displayed here. So we have different options over here. So if let's say I don't want to have these spirals and I want to have another uh, now the image is now the hexagon is distorted, but I want these lines to have a parallel constraint. So how will I have that? So I will select this line. We press the control and I will select the other line. I will go to the constraint dialog box, and here you can have the parallel option. You can also have the distance option. So you see that the distance between two lines is the 34.5. I can have the length of these both lines. Can also have the angle between them. I can make them parallel. I can make them perpendicular also, but since this is an hexagon, I cannot make the opposite edges of an hexagon perpendicular. So it will give me an error. I can have this parallelism back. I can always fix this. That means that this will be fixed now, and I cannot change the angle, the length, distance between them. So if you see, we have different options over here, and we will use these options each and every option when and when required. Now let's see other constraint options that we have in Catia. Catia provides. So next is the constraint option. So if I want to give a dimension to 2D sketch that I have made, I will use this constraint option. So like I have a circle over here. So I will use this constraint option. I will select the edge of this circle, and you see that I have a diameter displayed over here. I can change the diameter to whatever I want by just double clicking it, and I can change the diameter to say let's 20, say 20 mm. And okay, so the diameter is changed. If I want to increase this further, I can keep this as 100. You see, it's now bigger. We fit all in one. I have a bigger circle. You can also have the radius by simply changing this diameter drop down to radius. and I will have a radius of say 25. That means a diameter of 50. So you see, I will have a radius of 25. So my circle will have a diameter of 50. That's how constraints are given. So you can also see that now the circles can still move because this center of the circle does not have a dimension with the x and y coordinates. So it can move anywhere wherever you want to move it. It just have a fixed radius of 25. So I can also fix this circle by giving a dimension from the x and y axis. So let's try doing that. I will select the constraint option. I'll select the center point. I will select the x axis. So you see I have the vertical dimension over here. Want to keep it as 9. So I will double click it to keep it 9. So it has moved vertical. So now this circle can move in the horizontal direction at a distance of 9 mm from the horizontal axis. But I still need to require to give the distance from the y-axis so that this is fully constrained. So select the constraint option, select the center point y-axis, and I have the distance over here. I can change this to let's say 40. So, yeah. So you see now the color of the circle has changed to green. So Catia has some color codes for 2D sketches which uh, give us a simple idea about how whether your drawing 2D sketch is constrained, fully constrained, under constrained, or over constrained. So we will once I will look at those color coding, what that color code means. So they are basically uh, 6 to 7 color codes that Catia has. So the first color is the gray color. So the gray color indicates the construction element. So let's say I have a random sketch over here, and I have changed this edge to a construction edge. So I will just go here down in the construction, sketch tools and construction tab, construction option, and you see that this has changed to gray color. This line has changed to gray color. That means that this is a construction element, and it will not come in my 3D models. So the gray color means the construction tabs, construction elements. So to bring them back to the original, I will just select them and I will again click on this construction and I will have them back as the original sketches. So that the gray color indicates the construction tab, construction element. Yellow color, there is a yellow color. Yellow color is usually for the non-modified. So the yellow color means non-modifiable elements, like the edges in a cross section of a 3D models. So we will look this yellow color when we come in the 3D modeling part. White color means the under constrained drawings. This here is does not have any constraints, so it can move anywhere I want. And this is under constraint. That's why it's a yellow color. So yellow color means under constraint. Green color, as we now have seen, is fully constrained. That means I cannot move and change the size or move the this 2D sketch to wherever I want. Fully green color means fully constrained. Purple color means over constrained. So if I let's say I give this another, I want to give another by mistake I've given another dimension over here. So it will change the color to purple. It means this is fully constrained, and I am trying to give another constraint to that. That means over constraining the 2D sketch. So I will delete this one. It's back to green. Red color means the inconsistent geometry. It means that we have made a 2D sketch and it is inconsistent, or it is open at some ends and it is overdefined at one end. So at that point, the sketch is turned to red in color. So that are the color constraints that Katia has. So we need to keep that in mind, all the color constraints when we are defining constraint for a 2D sketch. Let's revise them once again. The gray color means the construction element. Yellow means non-modified element of usually the 3D sketch, 3D model. White means under constraint sketches. Green means fully constrained sketches. Purple means over constrained sketches. And red means inconsistent geometry. That are the color codes that CATIA provides for the constraint. Now coming back to the constraints tab. Next we have auto constraint option. So let's see what that does. So let's say I have a rectangle over here and I do not want to give constraints on my own. I want CATIA to generate constraints automatically for this rectangle. So I will use this auto constraint. It will ask first option that it asks me to elements to be constrained. So I want all these four edges to be constrained. So I will select them, see four lines. Now it asks me to to specify the reference line. That means from which the constraint needs to be specified. So I will select these y-axis and x-axis. I can select next is the symmetry lines. So it asks me that if I want symmetry, uh, if I have a mirrored image of a object, if it wants me to select symmetry lines, but I do not have currently there. So I will leave that blank and I will select OK. So you see now Katia is automatically constrained this rectangle. Uh, it gives me the length of this horizontal length, the vertical length, the of the rectangle, and also gives the dimension from the x axis and y axis. So that's how the auto constraint works. You can always change this by just double clicking this, and you can define a specific value to it if you want. So that's how auto constraint works. Next, here you can also have a fix option, fix together. So let's say I have a random sketch of many lines. So I want to move this. I, if I select this edge and move this, so the sketch my sketch changes. So I do not want that. I just want to make these lines together. I want to stick them. I want them to stick together. Always stick together. So I will use this fix together option. And I will select this whole sketch. So you see now all the lines are selected and points are selected. I will click on OK. And here I will have a paperclip like option which shows indicates that these all are fixed together. So you now see now this whole sketch is fixed together and I can by just clicking any one edge I can move this whole sketch together. To undo this I will just click on this paperclip option and I will delete this. So now these are not fixed together and I can change the single edges or points. So that's the fixed together option, fixed together constraint. Next we have the edit multi-constraint option. Oh, sorry, we have the animate constraint option. So this is generally used to check animate certain dimensions and for checking whether we are having a clearance or not. So let's see how that looks like. So let's say I have a uh, slot of C section. something. Okay, I have a C section over here. Let's say like this. Also, these blue lines that we can see indicate certain points like if I want a horizontal line, this line will be turned blue and it shows me that my line is horizontal. And if I drag further, uh, there's another blue line that's coming from the top. That means that now this point is in line with the vertical line. And I want that. I will click here. I will drag this upwards, and you see, if I change the direction of my mouse, the blue line disappears, and when I'm vertically above that point, the line turns blue. That means this line is vertical now. I will click here and I will drag it outside on the right side. So it comes a blue line. That means it's a horizontal. And I want this point to be in line with the vertical point. So now you see that I have a vertical blue line and a horizontal blue line. I will click here and, and I will click here. So that's a C section that we have. And I have a rectangle inside this. Let's say my rectangle like this. But first I will give constraints to them. So I will double click because I have to give many constraints. So I will have a distance between these two. Let's say I have a distance of 1 mm from the top and 1 mm from the below. And I have to give the distance between these two edges also. So I will have a distance of, let's say, 4 mm. So now to escape from this constraint dimension, I will just hit the escape button and I'm out of the constraint option. Now I want to animate this. Let's say I want to check move this. I want to decrease and increase this dimension. That is the 4 mm gap. I want to change this. I will click on the animate constraint. I will click the 4 mm distance. It now asks me the first value. That is that is the value default value. I have 4 mm. Uh, will ask me the last value. I can keep it to 10 mm. Sorry, I will keep it to 10 mm. And then I will have the number of steps. That means how many times I want to iterate this animation. And here you have various options like playback, run back, pause, stop, run. And then you have one shot, reverse, loop, and repeat. So I will keep it in loop and I will play this animation. So you can see that it will uh, change the dimension to from 4 to 8. It will do this for 20 times. I can stop this whenever I want. So that's it. So that's the animate constraint option for us. So yes. So last option in the constraints tab is the edit multi constraint. So what that does is if you have generated auto constraint and if you do not want and if you have many lines that you want to edit, you can edit them using edit multi constraint. So let's see how that works. Suppose I have a rectangle over here and I select the auto constraint for this rectangle. I'll select this rectangle. I'll select this line y-axis and x-axis. Sorry. Uh, Auto constraint. Select this for the reference elements. I will select this horizontal and vertical axis. And I will click on OK. So you see, I have 6 dimensions to change now. 4 dimensions to change. So if you have many dimensions to change simultaneously, you can always use this multi edit multi constraint option. So you see now the first constraint is the highlighted one, that is the distance from the vertical axis. So if I want to change this, I will change to 10 mm. I will click on OK. So you see, before clicking on OK, you can change the other values also simultaneously. So let's say I want to change this to 10. I will click outside. I will next select the next dimension. So the highlighted dimension is this one. That means the vertical distance from the x-axis. So I can change this to 20. I will click outside, select the next dimension. This dimension is the horizontal distance of my rectangle. So I can keep this as 50 and click outside. And I will change the last dimension, select the last dimension. It is the vertical dimension. So I want to keep this as, let's say 25. Click outside. So once you click OK, the dimensions will all the dimensions will be changed. So if you want to see before how that looks like, you can always have a preview of that. So you see, this is the this will be my position and size of my rectangle. If you do not want, you can always change these values again. So you see here you have two options: the initial values and the current values. The initial values were the values that were generated when we had used the auto constraint option. The current values are to the values that we had inputted now. So I will click on OK. You see all the dimensions are changed simultaneously. I do not have to change each and every dimension one time. So that's the process when we have many dimensions to change simultaneously. So that's the constraints tab. That's all the constraints tab that we have. Uh, the last option in this 2D sketch is the sketch tools tab. So let's see what it does. So the first option in this we have the grid option. So as you can see, there is a background grid switched on when we as soon as we turned on the Sketcher workbench. So it's generally when useful when we have to have a grid when we are making 2D drawings. You can always turn this off and you will have a plain background. So I prefer to keep the default view, that is the gridded view, for the 2D sketching. Next is the snap to point. If I turn this on, uh, I will always be pointing. My sketch will always start or end at the corners of these grids. I cannot direct my sketch to start or end in between the grids. So that was the snap point option does. So let's say I have a circle. So you see my center always goes to a corner of a grid. I cannot start my circle in between the grid. So that was the snap point does. If I turn this off, I can start my circle wherever I want, at the corners or in the middle, anywhere I want. That's the snap to grid option. Next is the uh, construction element option. As we had seen earlier, this option is to change my sketch to construction lines. Uh, it can change any arc or edge or any line to construction line. So let's say I have a rectangle and I want to change only this line to construction. I will select and it will become orange and this line will be gray. That is the construction line. If I want to change back to it, if I want to bring it back to the unconstruction line, I will select this. I will turn this off. But again, once again clicking it, it will be turned off and my sketch will be back to normal. That is non-construction. So that's the construction element option. Next is the geometrical constraints option. Uh, this is used this make sure that we have this geometrical constraint and dimensional constraint option turned on whenever you are making 2D sketches, because when we make 2D sketch we generally use the constraints like parallelism, perpendicular, concentricity for many applications. So if you have not turned this on, it will not the Catia interface will not allow you to give parallel option to or perpendicular options to two lines or concentricity to circles. To make sure that we have turned this on, that means it is orange, to use the options like parallelism and perpendicular and eccentricity. Next is the dimensional constraint. So also we need to keep this on so that we can specify the constraints, dimensional constraints to our 2D sketch. Like if uh, I have a sketch over here, and if I turn this off, I will not be able to give this two edges perpendicularity. If I select these two edges and I go here, select perpendicular, you see constraints are created temporary. If you want to make it permanent, you have to activate constraint creation switches before clicking OK button. So you see the error says me to switch on this option. If I switch this option on, I will select these two lines. Will go to constraints and I will click perpendicular. You see, this will allow me to give perpendicularity. Similarly, if I have turned this option off for the dimensional constraint, I will not be able to give dimensions to these lines, or rather, I will not be able to change them. Let's see and do that. Allowing it should not allow. To make sure that we have this dimensional constraint also on. So that's the that's all in the that's all we have in the Sketcher workbench. In the next session, we will be trying out some basic sketches. Um, okay, that's all for today's session. Hope to see you in the next session. Thank you.